Hey guys, welcome back. So now we are getting into the conclusion of King in Black with King in Black issue 5. But if you have not read Venom issue 34, rectify that. Pause this video, read Venom issue 34, then watch my breakdown on issue 34. Then you can come back because you'll be all caught up. Because much like we've seen before, the events within Venom Volume 4, they weave through very closely with the main King in Black series. So now let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week. And don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squad up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so jumping back into King in Black, we pick up like not only right after issue 4, but also Venom issue 34, which both bring us to the point of the quickening of Eddie Brock. And I'm telling you guys, like, it's taking everything in me not to make like a Highlander reference right here, because Eddie is charged right now. But while his codex is being drawn to his body by the Enigma Force, it also mentioned to him to choose a form, of which we didn't necessarily see in Venom issue 34, but that in itself we'll talk about really soon. But in the meantime, immediately when we jump in, we start with this standoff between the Silver Surfer and Knull. And immediately when we see this happen, like, Knull kind of gives the Surfer like this "I know you from somewhere" type of energy, which is we knows from Silver Surfer Black when the Surfer got sucked into a black hole back when the Black Order stole the body of Thanos, and both Knull and the Silver Surfer went head to head. But in response, like, the Surfer, he lets Knull know like indeed they have met, but even until now the Surfer remains unimpressed. But I don't know about that, man, because back at the time with Silver Surfer Black, like, I don't know, like, Norrin, he seemed pretty impressed because Knull and that Grendel was on him. But let the Surfer tell it here, like, he's not impressed. Okay. But while they're hearing this standoff, the Surfer, he then turns his board into a sword. And when he does this, he lets Knull know like this isn't gonna be like before when the Surfer was like struggling to make stars. And he tells Knull like the reason why is because now there's another, a god of light. And with the Surfer saying that, that's a pretty big point to be made there. Because even though when the Surfer faced Knull the first time and the Surfer barely got away, but even still at that time, he was very much in a weakened state, which is different from now with him and his board fully charged up. And when I say board, it's a sword now, but still, even still, it's fully charged up. So not only does that in itself make a difference, but also with him mentioning the god of light, who Knull had faced before and fought to a standstill, like the two of those against Knull, like that really doesn't sound good for him, with one of them fighting him off, and of course I mean like with the help of Ego. But if Knull has to face that, the Surfer who's now at full power, and the god of light who fought him to a standstill, then that's gonna be a problem. But also Knull lets the Surfer know like no matter how fast light is, or no matter how fast light travels, darkness is always there waiting. And now that they're face to face again, Knull tells the Surfer that he's gonna die an honorable death. And the Surfer lets him know like, well, you might be right, but I'm not gonna face it alone. And as soon as the Surfer says this, like, Cap calls Avengers assemble, and everybody comes rushing in like Endgame. But in this case, Avengers, X-Men, Fantastic Four, Doctor Strange, Blade, Heroes for Hire, and pretty much everyone that we'd seen out in the field up to this point. But as soon as this happens, there's a boom of light in between the heroes and Knull, and it's Captain Universe Venom on your front with the God of Light in his chosen form, being Venom, of course. And it looks sick because the eyes and the Venom logo are glowing, but then you have like the star constellations throughout the rest of the suit, which in a way gives it that Captain Universe design, but in this case it leans way more towards looking more Venom-like. But it's a sick combination, like Ryan Stegman killed it. But so now when Venom gets here, like, Knull tries to play him because he's like, okay, so the God of Light done chose this dude that I done killed a bunch of times. And because of that, Knull just sizes him up and he's like, okay, so like what's gonna be different now? Oh man, I'll tell you what's different, because Eddie Brock, the underdog, Captain Universe, he summons Mjolnir and the Surfer's sword board, and everybody is at a loss for words. And like when this happened, I gotta say, like, for Thor, man, like these hammers ain't loyal. Like, Mjolnir belonged to the streets. But really, like, this ain't the first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last. So like, Thor, get over it, because you and Mjolnir are in a open relationship, in case you didn't know. But then when Eddie taking Mjolnir and the Surfer's sword, he then gets to mixing them up and he makes a battle axe. And I'm telling you, like, what made it funny for me was like the look on Eddie's face before he exploded towards Knull. It's like he just looked at him and said, ooh, I got something for that. And boom, battle axe. And it looks so sick because you got like the handle of Mjolnir, but then the blade itself is very much like the Venom logo. And this thing is swinging the power cosmic, the Enigma Force, and lightning, bro. And when this happens, like Knull wants no parts of this. But you know what, like it's also crazy because now Knull is being chased very much like he was chasing the Silver Surfer. And you know what, like I don't blame him because Eddie went from 0 to 1,000,000 like real quick. But then also like the funny thing is like, okay, Cyclops is like, okay now, did I just see what I think I saw? Like Eddie Brock just made a battle axe out of the Surfer's board and Thor's hammer. And he flew. Like somebody please tell me I ain't getting my optic beams crossed out here, like what's going on? But even with Eddie taking off, like he tells Cyclops, Cap, and the others like to stay down on the ground and take care of the civilians. But while he's chasing Knull just throws a ton of dragons his way. But they just don't stand a chance against Captain Una Surfer Thor. And when it happens, like Knull, he plays it smart because he uses the pieces of all these dragons that's flying everywhere and he uses it as cover so he can sneak up on Eddie and strike him with All Black. And when this happens, man, Eddie then catches All Black with one hand. And then he turns All Black into All Gone. Like nothing left. Not a drop. And of course when this happens, Knull is just like, how? But even with seeing this, we gotta keep in mind what Rex said about Eddie being the longest to hold a symbiote and how that allows him to do things with a symbiote that no other host could do. And in a way you can practically say that began when Eddie and the Venom symbiote separated themselves from the Hive. But even with that being a factor and it being exclusive to Eddie, he then also has the power of Captain Universe. So it's like he's the perfect storm. Like this dude is broken right now. But with Eddie grounding Knull and winding up like he's about to go for the head, like I'm pretty sure he's finna go for the head. But even with this being the case, Knull calls for his Celestial that has been bonded with his symbiote to reach down, grab Eddie, and get him out of there. And when it does, like Eddie immediately pulls anything you can do, I can do better. Because much like Knull had decapitated the head of a Celestial and created Nowhere, Eddie then takes his battle axe and he decapitates the Celestial. And it's crazy because Eddie is hitting these marks like he's pulling a Knull on Knull. And it's really one of those things to where, you know, Knull just had it coming, you know, because in my humble opinion, it was very disrespectful when Knull came in out the gate with King in Black and pulled a sentry on the sentry. Because when we seen that, it kind of let us know that Knull, like he's another level of petty. But oh boy, when it come to being petty, Eddie got plenty. And he lets Knull know, like he remembers. But wait a minute, like it's funny though, like while they're fighting, how Spider-Man kind of gets in the way. But in a way, it kind of makes me want to read the Spider-Man King in Black tie-in again, because those events might have been a bit closer to this than I thought before. But who knows? But like I was saying with Eddie, like he tells Knull that he remembers. He remembers the pain that Knull caused for him, dragging him up from the sewers, the pain, the fear, the agony when he ripped away his other. Like Eddie's being very intentional with all of this. And now that the tables have turned, Eddie is now holding Knull by the neck and dangling his body off of a building. Like man, look how the tables have turned. But on top of that, he then digs into Knull's chest with his battle axe, opening this dude up. Like this is personal. Like this is mad personal, because when Eddie pulls the battle axe away and pulling the symbiote armor off of Knull, like he then tells Knull, like you want to know what I remember the most? Because he remembers feeling hopeless, feeling helpless. But the exclamation point, like he remembers falling. And when Eddie tells him this, he just drops Knull, wearing nothing but his little symbiote loincloth. But even when Knull crashes down, like Eddie immediately comes after him. But as Knull gathers himself, he lets Eddie know like he can't win. And the reason that Knull tells him is like, well, Eddie may be able to kill Knull, like he may be able to kill him, but the darkness, it still lives in his son, Dylan. And man, did Knull mess up talking about Dylan. Goodness. Because when Eddie swoops in and he picks up Knull, I just knew immediately, okay, we going for a Sentry style finisher. And when Eddie picks up Knull and takes him into space, Knull lets Eddie know that he'll never be free of him. And he tells Eddie like the darkness has teeth, and Eddie's just like, well, so do we. And when Eddie says this, he opens his mouth and he just beams light to the equivalent of who knows how many stars on top of Knull's head as they make their way to the sun. And when this happens, I could just imagine like every previous Captain Universe looking at this guy like, oh my god, like why? Oh my god, what? Like Eddie, chill. But Eddie has zero chill because Knull threatened his son. And because Knull threatened his son, now that he has the God of Light, Eddie has to baptize this guy on the surface of the sun. And as soon as this happens, like Knull just turns into Pop Rocks. Like he's straight up just built like Alka-Seltzer in this moment. But effectively it's here and now where Eddie Brock has defeated Knull. But even with doing so, like here's the kicker. Because as soon as Knull's defeated, Eddie starts hearing a countless number of voices, and the Enigma Force tells him that it's the Hive, and they're singing to Eddie because they're free. And as Eddie heads back to Earth, you can even see the Hive like leaving the planet as Eddie rushes his way back down to Earth. But what's funny is like back down on Earth, like all the vampires who were helping out, and even some of those who were taken by symbiotes at one point, like they all just took the opportunity to just turn on Blade. But when the sky cracks and the multiple beams of light come down, like the vampires, they just didn't stand a chance. But then immediately after, when the battle axe comes crashing down, like the Surfer calls for his board and Thor calls for Mjolnir, and the axe comes apart, the board goes back to the Surfer and Mjolnir goes back to Thor. And when this happens, they both kind of come to the conclusion like, okay, well, I guess we won. But the Surfer then points out, like even with this being the case, things aren't gonna be quite the same from now on. And it's kind of ridiculous like the way this pans out, because in a way we also get to understand like what Knull was saying like seconds before his baptism. Because when Eddie gets back and Peter asks like, is Knull finished? And Eddie's kind of like, yeah, more or less. But Eddie says more or less because he realizes a couple things are not quite done yet. Because for one, he senses something going on with Dylan, so he rushes through everyone to go and find him. And when he finds Dylan, Dylan tells him that something's burning inside of him because there's a piece of Knull that's still in him, and now that piece is burning him up. And Eddie tells him like he knows, and he tries to calm Dylan down for a little bit. He's like, hey, brace yourself, kid, like this is gonna hurt. And when he tells him, he reaches inside and he grabs that piece of Knull and he pulls it out from Dylan and he destroys it, because he made Dylan a promise that he wasn't gonna let him fall to this darkness, and with pulling it out of him here, he honors that promise. And I gotta say, like, well, maybe it's just me, but within these last few issues of both Venom, King in Black, and King in Black, like I kind of feel like Cates and Stegman have kind of been giving us some of these like Matrix references, like with Neo pulling the bullet out of Trinity and Eddie essentially becoming the One like as soon as he turned to Captain Universe. But oh, speaking of which, like it's here where the Enigma Force then tells Eddie that he no longer needs the light to protect him. And as the Enigma Force leaves Eddie's body, it then tells him that he has become something else, something new. And like when the Enigma Force leaves, like all these different symbiotes, they start slithering towards Eddie and they start gathering around him, and Peter and Dylan are kind of freaking out. They're like, what's going on? And it's here once again, like where Eddie hears all these different voices, it's the voices of the Hive. But even with him hearing all of them, he can't tell what they're saying. And the Venom symbiote lets him know is because they're speaking in their ancient tongue. And the Venom symbiote lets Eddie know that all these other symbiotes are gathering around because Eddie defeated the Void. He's freed their kind, and from here forward, Eddie is the Hive Mind, which also means that Eddie is now the god of the symbiotes, and on top of that, he is also the King in Black. And now my mind is officially blown. But then on top of that, like what's even crazier, man, is like Donny Cates and Ryan Stegman, like Venom issue 200 is their last issue. And I mean just as far as the two of them working together on Venom for the foreseeable future. But like with this being the case, man, like I'm not sure who's picking up later or after. But I just want to say, well, for one, I will try it out. You know, I'm not going to say because they're not writing and illustrating that I'm not going to check it out. Like that's just absurd. But I will say, whoever's coming up after this, the bar is high. Like the bar, it is up there. It is up and it's stuck. So whoever is picking up Venom after this right here, it better slap. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below so you can go to patreon.com/Dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Man, that was a ride. And like, man, I'm telling you, like every previous Captain Universe, like when they see Eddie after this, they just gonna look at him and shake their head. But let me know your guys' thoughts down in the comments. This should be interesting. And we'll do it again on the next one. All right, later.